social media, because it really helps me to reach a lot more people so that all of us can learn and upgrade our knowledge in programming. And I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video of C++ for beginners. In this video I want to talk about nesting loops. In my previous videos we have talked about while loop, do while loop, and for loop, and now I want to show you the example on how you can really combine and nest those loops. So if you haven't watched my previous videos or you are not familiar with loops at all, I recommend you to watch those. I'm going to link those in the description of this video. And also, before we start, make sure to subscribe to my channel and click that bell icon as well. So what are we going to do in this video? I want to really show you how you can nest for loop and do while loop, and the example that I'm going to use to explain that is going to be following. So I want my user, which is going to be a student, let's say, to enter 3 grades or more. If you want, we are going to use 3 for this example. And I want those grades to be between 1 and 5. And then I want to write out the average grade, so the average grade between those 3 that he has entered. So let's start building our program. The first thing that I need to explain is, since we are going to enter 3 grades, that means that we are going to repeat that entering process 3 times. And for that I'm going to use for loop, so I'm going to write for, and then in these parentheses here I'm going to put my initial setup of for loop, which is going to be, the first thing is going to be initial value of our counter. So I'm going to declare a counter, which is going to be called I, and initially I'm going to give it a value of 0. That is the first thing. The second thing that I need to put in these parentheses here is going to be the condition that our loop checks each time that it wants to run a block of code, which is going to be this block of code that we put inside these parentheses. So that condition we put here, and that condition is going to be while our I is less than 3. So we want to make 3 iterations. In the first iteration our I has the value of 0, in the second iteration it's going to have the value of 1, and then in our third iteration it's going to have the value of 2. So we have made 3 iterations. After that it gets the value of 3, but this condition here is not going to be true anymore, so then our for loop is not going to be executed anymore. So that is the second thing. And then the third thing which we need is going to be really increasing that value of our counter in each iteration, so after each iteration. And I'm going to put here this increment on our I variable. Okay, so in this block of code here, we are going to repeat 3 times something. So what is that something? That is going to be really the process of our user entering the value for his grade. And since we said that that grade needs to be between 1 and 5, I am going to use do while loop for that. How? Well, I'm going to write out do, okay, and then here I'm going to put while, which is going to be the condition. So here we prompt our user to enter the grade, and then we say here you are going to have to enter that grade while that grade is less than 1 or greater than 5. So since we don't have any variable that we are going to use to enter that grade, I will have to declare it here. So I'm going to say here int grade, like this. Okay, and then let's prompt our user in this block here to enter his grade. So I'm going to write out cout, and let's say enter grade, and I am going to use the current value of my counter so that I can really say which grade my user is entering. So enter first grade, second grade, and third grade. So I'm going to say I plus 1, like this. Why plus 1? Well, because our counter starts at 0, and it wouldn't make much sense to say to our user, please enter grade 0. So that is why I'm increasing this value of my I when I want to write out a message to my user. Okay, like this. So here I'm going to write out, please enter a grade, and after that I need to accept that grade that my user enters in my grade variable. So I'm going to say cin grade, like this. And we are going to repeat this process here for a single grade while our user enters a grade that is less than 1 or grade is greater than 5. Okay, so our program is really going to prompt our user, please enter grade 1, and then he enters 6, for example, and then our program checks this condition here and says, okay, you have missed this part here, so go back and then please enter grade 1, so first grade again. Okay, so if I run my program now, let's just prove that very quickly. So our program says now enter first grade, so enter grade 1, and then let's say that I enter 9, for example. It prompts me again to enter first grade because I have not obeyed this rule here, this part here. So I'm going to say this time, for example, 5, and then it says, okay, you have successfully entered first grade. Let's now enter second grade. So for that second grade, let's enter, for example, 0. And then it prompts me again, you have not entered correct value for grade 2. Please enter it again. And let's say that this time I'm going to enter 1. And then it asks for third grade. And let's say that this time third grade is going to be 3. So our program now has successfully accepted this third grade, and now our program is going to really finish its execution because we haven't written anything else after this part here. So there is something else that we need to write, and since we want to calculate the average grade of our user, what we are going to need is going to be really to sum all of these grades that our user enters. So I am going to declare a variable which is going to really hold that sum of our user's grades. So I am going to put it here. I'm going to call it sum, and initially I'm going to assign it a value of 0, and later I'm going to explain why. So I have declared a variable that is going to be of type int, and I have called it sum and assigned it a value of 0. So this sum here is going to, each time that our user enters a grade, and we really check that that grade is valid grade. After that, we want our sum to hold whatever it was previously holding plus the value of our grade, like this. Okay. So why I have assigned a value of 0 to my sum? Because 0 is a neutral value when it comes to adding numbers. You add 0 to whichever number and then you get that same number. And in a situation where we didn't assign any value to our sum, we would get really an error. So if I try to run my program now, you see that it prompts me with an error and it says uninitialized local variable sum used, because it does not have any value assigned to this variable here. It is going to say really that it does not know how to add the value, so the value of our grade, to our sum. So that is why we need to assign some value to our sum variable. Okay, so and that value is going to be 0 because 0 is neutral when it comes to adding numbers. Okay, so now I can really run my program, and as you can see, that error has disappeared. So I'm going to stop my program, and let's very quickly write out this sum that we have calculated here. So I'm going to say cout, and I'm going to write out sum like this. Sum is equal to, and then let's write out the value of our sum, and let's add end line like this. So I am going to run my program once more. It prompts me to enter first grade. I'm going to say that my first grade is going to be, for example, 5, and then my second grade is going to be, for example, 6. That's an error, so please enter your second grade again. So I'm going to enter this time 2, let's say, and then for my third grade, let's enter 1, for example. and it says that the sum of my grades is equal to 8, which is correct. So 1 plus 2 plus 5, that is going to equal to 8. So what we are left to do, now we should only really divide our sum by the count of our grades, which is 3, because we have hard-coded this value here to 3. So our user can enter only 3 grades. You can really use a variable for this, or you can hard-code it to any other value that you want and need. So here, after this line of code here, what I need to do is following. So I'm going to say cout, and then let's say average is equal to, let's say average grade is equal to, and let's write out the result. So that is going to be sum divided by 3. Okay, is it though? So I'm going to run my program, and let's enter, for example, value 2, and then again value 2, and then let's enter, for example, value 4, and then it says that average grade is equal to 2, which is not correct. But why has this happened? So as you can see here, we have used 2 integer variables. So our sum is integer value, and then 3 is integer value as well. So when you divide 2 integer values, the result is also going to be integer value. So in order to get a floating point, a decimal point number, you really need to convert one of these 2 into a float type. So you can say either here, you can say float. So please convert my sum variable into float and then divide. Or you can put here this 0.0, or you can leave both of these, whichever you prefer. So I'm going to leave both of these like this. So if I run my program once more, it prompts me again to enter first grade. So I'm going to say that my first grade is equal to 5, and then my second grade is also 5. And then let's say that the third grade of our user is going to be 9. So our program prompts us again to enter the third grade because it needs to be in this interval here. So I'm going to say now that the value of my third grade is going to be 3, which is correct value. And after that, as you can see, it writes out that the sum of these 3 grades is 13, and then average grade is 4.33333. So that was an example on how you can really combine and nest loops in order to solve complex problems. And thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon, also share it with anyone who would like to learn programming, and I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video of C++ for beginners. In this video I want to talk about nesting for loops. So I want to show you how you can solve more complex problems using nested for loop. But before we start, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon as well, and also like this video. So this example that we are going to do today is going to be really multiplications table. So I'm going to show you the example that I want to program. So that would be this here. And if you look at this multiplication table that we want to make, you can really start to notice a pattern. And what pattern I mean? You see here, this first operand in this first part of my multiplication table, so in this first table, as you can see, this first operand is 1, and it stays 1 in this table here. After that, you can look at this second table, you see that this operand is now 2, and then in my third table it has increased to 3, 4, 5, and it really increases, so it increments by 1, and it goes up to 10. Okay, so that is the first operand, so this first part of my multiplication. After that, we can look at this second operand, and you can really notice that it increases in each iteration by 1. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10. And then it does the same thing in this second table. So it goes from 1 to 10 again. And then the same in my third table, fourth, fifth. And it really behaves the same in this 10th table as well. So that is the pattern that I want you to notice. So this first operand can be really represented using one for loop. So let's say that that is going to be outer for loop, and it is going to increase each time that my second operand counts from 1 to 10, and that second operand we can really represent using another for loop, which is going to be really inner for loop. So the program, the algorithm for solving this problem is going to go like this. You have outer for loop, which is going to count from 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10. So it is going to count from 1 to 10. And then you are going to have inner for loop, which is also going to count from 1 to 10, but for each value of my counter of my outer loop. Okay, so that means that my outer loop counter changes only after my inner loop has counted from 1 to 10. So let's copy the text of our task here. I'm going to say multiplication table, and let's comment that text out. So as we said, in order to solve this problem, we are going to use nested for loops. So I'm going to add empty space here. And then the first thing that I need is going to be my outer loop. So I'm going to really set up my outer loop. I'm going to say for, and then we need to declare a counter, which I'm going to call I. So I'm going to say int I is equal to, and then since our outer, let me show you this image one more time. Since it goes from 1 to 10, I'm really going to set its initial value to 1. So I'm going to say I is equal to 1. And then I'm going to write the condition, so how long this for loop is going to run. And that is going to be while this I is less than or equal to 10, like this. And then each iteration, it is going to increase by 1. So that is going to be I plus plus. Okay, and then I'm going to put this block of code here that is going to be executed in each iteration of this for loop. So what we need to do in each iteration of our for loop, let's look at our image one more time. And as you can see, it really says that in each iteration of this outer for loop, you need to count from 1 to 10. So in this iteration here, some other counter really counts from 1 to 10, and then new iteration, so our I is now 2, and then counter counts again from 1 to 10, and then 3, but also we have this inner counter that counts from 1 to 10. Okay, so let's really write that code. So that inner counter that counts from 1 to 10 for each value of our I, we are going to represent with another for loop. And that is going to be really that nested or that inner for loop. So I'm going to write for. And that inner counter I'm going to call j. So I'm going to write int j. And since our j also counts from 1 to 10, I'm going to set its initial value to 1. And I'm also going to say, please iterate through this for loop while our j is less than or equal to 10 as well. And then in each iteration, please increase the value of j by 1. So do this increment operation. And then in each iteration of our j loop, we are going to execute this block of code here. So what we are going to do in this block of code here? Well, let me look at that image once more. And as you can see, in each iteration of our j, so this is one iteration of our j, this is second, third, fourth, fifth, and then 10th iteration of our j. After that, we change our I counter value, so we increment that, and then our j starts one more to count from 1 to 10. So in each of these iterations, as you can see, really we have to multiply our I value counter with our j value counter and write the result of that. So I am going to write that here. I am going to write cout like this, and then let's write out the value of our I counter like this, and then let's write out this multiplication operation, and then let's write out j like this. This is just formatting our text, so I'm going to put this equal sign, and then I really want to multiply those two counters like this. And let's also add one end line here so that our text is formatted nicely, because we are going to have multiple lines. So with this, we have really covered this multiplication part. And there is only one more thing left to do, and that is to add one more end line, because I really want to make separation between these. So I want to make separation between these tables. This is going to be one logical part. After that, this is going to be another, then third, fourth, and I want to put empty space between those two so that I can group them. So I'm going to add here cout end line like this, and that should be it pretty much. So if I run my program now, as you can see, it has generated this multiplication table from 1 to 10. Okay, and it has done that in a matter of less than a second. So as you can see here, we have this outer counter. Oh, I cannot mark that only. So we have this outer counter, which is going to be our I, that counts from 1 to 10. But for each value of our outer counter, for each value of our I, we have to really count from 1 to 10 with our inner counter, which is going to be our J, as you can see here. Okay, so these are the results of our multiplication operation. And I hope that you have seen now how you can really use programming to your advantage, how you can use it to solve not really complex, but tedious tasks. You would really need 20 or 30 minutes in order to write this yourself, and you can now generate it with just a couple of lines of code and less than a second of your computer's power to really execute this code here that you have written. And the most amazing part is that you don't really have to put 10 here. So we have put 10 here because I want to make this example manageable for this video, but you don't have to hard code these values here. You can really use whatever values you want. You can say, for example, let's say 2000. Okay, so I want to generate multiplications table up to 2000. How long would that take in real life? So without programming. Okay, now you see.
A few moments later.
Okay, so it is still running, and it is going to generate around 4 million records, which is a lot, and it is going to do that in a matter of minutes. So how long would it take for you to even just count from 1 to 4 million? It would take you probably days, if not months. And also there were a lot of errors that you would probably make in that process. So I hope that now you can really recognize the power of programming. Now if you needed to do this task, you would really program your computer to do it, and now you can just go take a break and your computer is going to finish that task for you. So I hope that you can recognize now how you can use programming in order to solve different types of tasks that you can come across in your school, in your job, or life in general. And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Also click the bell icon and share it with anyone who would like to learn programming. And I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video of C++ for beginners. In this video, I want to show you how you can draw shapes using C++. So before we start, make sure to subscribe to my channel and also hit that bell icon as well, so that you are notified when I publish my next video. And let me show you now what we are going to do in this video. So here, where is it? Here I have image of the task that we are going to do today, and that is going to be really to draw this rectangle shape with the desired height and width and a symbol that our user enters. Okay, so that is the task that we are going to do in this video. And let's very quickly analyze this problem and see how we are going to solve it. So the first thing that we need is for our user to enter height, width, and then symbol. And after that, we will really need to figure out a way, so figure out the algorithm on how we are going to draw this rectangle shape here. So if you look at this rectangle shape, you can really notice that it has the height that is going to be 3 of these symbols that our user has entered. And then it has the width that is going to take 4 of these symbols that our user has entered for width. Okay, so we are going to use nested for loop in order to solve this problem here. And if you're not familiar with nested for loop, I am going to link that video here because I have already made one video with nested for loops, so make sure to watch that video. And in this video, I am going to really use that nested for loop in order to control height and width of our rectangle shape. So we are going to have outer for loop, which is going to really control this height. And then for each iteration of our outer for loop, we are really going to control this width with another loop, and we are going to count from 1 up to 4, because 4 is the width that our user has entered, and draw that shape in each iteration of our inner for loop. Okay, so that is what we are going to do. So let's now translate that into code. I'm going to say here, first thing that we need is going to be from our user to enter width and height. So I'm going to declare 2 variables. The first one is going to be height, like this, and then width. Okay, so let's write out a message to our user so that he knows that he should enter height. Okay, now let's accept that height value in our height variable, and after that let's really copy this and do the same thing for our width, like this, and accept that value in our width variable. So that is the first step. The second step is going to be to declare another variable which is going to hold the symbol that our user wants to use for drawing that shape. So I'm going to declare a variable of type char, and I'm going to call it symbol, like this. And let's write out a message to the user so that he knows that he should enter that symbol, like this. And let's say cin symbol. So after we have acquired all the necessary inputs from our user, which are height, width, and symbol that we are going to use to draw our shape, now we are left to write the algorithm that is going to draw that rectangle shape. So as I already said, for that we are going to use nested for loop. So I am going to set up my outer loop, the first loop, and I'm going to say for, and then I'm going to declare the counter, which is going to count the iterations of my outer loop. Since that outer loop is going to control the height of our rectangle, I'm going to say int age. So I'm going to give the age name to our outer counter, and I'm going to set its initial value to 0, like this. And then we are going to put the condition how long our outer loop is going to run. So while our age is less than height that our user has entered, like this. And then after each iteration of my outer loop, we have to increment the value of our age counter. So that would be the setup of our outer loop. And let's now set up our inner loop. So I'm going to write for, and for this inner loop, I'm going to declare another counter, which I'm going to call w, like this, because this inner loop is going to control the width of rectangle shape. So I'm going to set its initial value to 0 as well. And then I'm going to say that it is going to run while this w is less than width that our user has entered, like this. And also after each iteration, we really need to increment the value of this w. Okay, so what we are going to do in this loop, so in this inner loop, if you look at this image here, where is it? Okay, here, you can really notice that in each iteration of our inner loop, it just draws this symbol that our user has entered. So I am going to very quickly just cout, so write that symbol out. I'm going to say cout, and then write out that symbol, like this. And there is really one more thing that we need to put, and that is going to be after this for loop. So this outer for loop finishes single iteration, we really need to put something else at the end. So here, at the end of our outer for loop. And let's look at our image. So as you can see here, after each iteration of our outer for loop, because it is controlling height and it is really iterating through this inner for loop in each iteration of our outer for loop, at the end of that iteration of outer for loop, we really need to put empty space. So here I need to put empty space, and that corresponds to this line here. So here I'm going to write out cout end line like this. And now if I run my program, we should really expect to see the shape, that rectangle shape of dimensions that our user defines. So let's say for height 4, and then for width, let's say for example 6. And the symbol that we want to use to draw that shape, let's say that that is going to be this plus symbol. Okay, so as you can see, our rectangle has the height of 4, and then it has the width of 2, 4, 6. So it has the width of 6 of these symbols that our user has entered. Okay, so there is one more thing that I notice here, and that is going to be really to format this shape to be a bit more pretty. So for that, we are going to use the library, which is called iomanip. So I am going to include that library here. I have to say include iomanip like this. And this library here really contains a function that is called setW, which means set width, which is really going to set the width of the field that comes after it. So I'm going to put here that function. I'm going to put these redirection signs here, and then in this space here, I'm going to write out set v, so set w actually. And then here I want to put what is the width of the field that comes after this function. So what is going to be the width of our symbol field? And let's use 3 for that, for example. So if I run my program again, but let me stop it first. And if I run it again, oh no, I haven't stopped my program, so I'm going to close it. Okay, and now if I run my program, you can see that it asks height and width again. So previously we have entered 4 and 6, and then for the symbol, let's enter plus again. And now, as you can see, our shape looks much nicer because of this set width function, because it has really assigned to each symbol, to each character that our user has entered, the width of 3 fields. Okay, so let's run our program one more time, and let's say that height is going to be 5 and width is going to be 7, and let's enter another shape. So let's say, for example, minus, and as you can see, it has written out the shape, so the rectangle shape of these dimensions that our user has entered, and it has used this symbol that our user also has entered. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon as well. Also, if you want me to make more videos like this, so if you want me to use programming to draw more shapes, make sure to write that in the comments down below so that I can know that you really enjoyed this video and like it as well. And thanks for watching. I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video of C++ for beginners. And this video is going to be sort of a continuation to my previous video in which I showed you how you can draw rectangle shape using C++. And in this video I want to show you how you can draw triangle and reversed triangle shapes using C++ as well. So if you're not familiar with how you can draw rectangle, I would suggest you to watch that video first. I'm going to link it here, because in my opinion it is a bit more difficult to draw triangle than it is to draw rectangle shapes. So one more thing, I have also created Instagram and Twitter accounts, so if you're interested in how developer life looks like, and also if you're interested in behind the scenes of these videos that I post on YouTube, make sure to follow me on my other social media, so at TrueCodeBeauty, Instagram and Twitter accounts. I'm going to put the link to those in the description of this video. So without further ado, let's start drawing our triangle shape. So here I have the shape that we are going to draw in this video, and that is going to be this equilateral triangle shape that I have here. And there is a couple of things that I want to explain before we start to write code. The first thing is going to be that this height, our user really has to enter this height. So we are going to let our user decide how many of these symbols are going to be on this side and this side and this side as well. And the second thing is going to be that our user defines this symbol. So whichever symbol our user wants to use in order to draw this shape, we are going to use that symbol that he enters. Those are two things that we need from our user. And then it is up to us to really think and figure out the algorithm that we are going to use in order to draw this triangle shape here. So let me explain to you how we are going to do that. So we are going to have two for loops, and those are going to be nested for loops. So if you're not familiar with for loop nesting, I'm going to link my video on that here, so make sure to watch it. So our outer for loop is the one that is going to control this height of a triangle. So in this particular case, it is going to have 5 iterations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then our inner for loop is the one that is going to control the width of this triangle. And if you really look at this triangle, you can notice that our outer for loop really goes from 1 up to the number that our user has entered. So it has 5 iterations in this particular case because our user has entered 5 for the length of this triangle, so for the length of its sides. So that is the behavior of our outer for loop. It goes from 1 up to 5 in this particular case. And then the behavior of our inner for loop is going to be the following. So in the first iteration of our outer for loop, our inner for loop has only 1 iteration. After that, in the second iteration of outer for loop, inner for loop has 2 iterations. Then in the third iteration of outer for loop, inner for loop has 3. In a fourth iteration of outer for loop, inner for loop has 4, and so on. So that means that our inner for loop goes from 1 up to the current value of the counter of outer for loop. So let's translate that into our C++ code. Let me return this picture here. Okay, so before we start to write that algorithm, I am going to create a variable which is going to hold the length that our user enters. So I'm going to call that variable length. Okay, and then let's write out a message to the user so that he knows that he should enter length like this. And let's store the value in our length variable. So that is the first thing that we need from our user. And then the second thing is going to be a symbol. So that is going to be of type char, like this. So I'm going to write out, cout symbol, like this, so that our user knows that he should enter symbol as well. And let's store that symbol in our symbol variable. So after we have acquired these two things from our user, let's translate the algorithm that I just explained into C++ code. So as I said, we are going to have two for loops. Outer for loop, which is going to have counter that I'm going to call, let's say, I. And that outer for loop, its counter goes from 1 up to the value that our user has entered, and it increases by 1 in each iteration. Okay, so I'm going to say I is equal to 1, and then I is less than or equal to length, so length that our user has entered, and then please increment that I in each iteration. So that is going to be outer for loop, and then inner for loop is going to go from 1 up to the current value of outer for loop's counter. So in the first iteration, it is going to execute only once, so it is going to have only one iteration. In the second iteration of outer for loop, it is going to execute twice. In the third, it is going to execute 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So how we are going to write that? We are going to say for int, and then our inner for loops counter I'm going to call j, and j goes from 1 up to the value of our I, so up to the value of outer for loops counter, and it increases by 1 as well in each iteration, and in each iteration it has to write out this symbol that our user has entered. So let's say cout symbol, like this. Okay, and then there is one more thing that I want to explain, and that is going to be after each iteration of outer for loop, really the next iteration starts in a new line. So we are going to write that here, So at the end of our for loop, our outer for loop, we are going to say cout end line. Okay, and now if I run this program, it asks for length. I'm going to say that length is, let's say, 5, and then symbol is going to be star symbol. And as you can see, it has really written out a triangle that has the length 5 of these symbols that our user has entered. And there is one more thing that I want to do in order to format this shape here to be a bit prettier, and that is going to be really to add a function here which is going to assign to each of these symbols that our user enters, so that our for loop writes out width of 2 fields, and that is going to be done using a function that is called setW, meaning set width. And this function here is going to give the space of 2 fields to the symbol that comes after it. And in order to use this function here, we have to include its library, and that is going to be iomanip library. So I'm going to say include, like this, iomanip. Oh, okay. And now this underline has went away. So if I run my program once more, and I enter, let's say, for length 6, and then for symbol I enter this symbol here, as you can see, our triangle shape looks better now. So it has the height, or actually the length, of 6 of these symbols that our user has entered, and it has also used this symbol here in order to draw this triangle shape. And there is one more thing that I want to show you. So at the beginning of this video, I promised that I'm going to teach you how you can draw triangle shape and then reversed triangle shape as well. So there is one very beautiful thing about programming, and that is going to be code reusability. And about real code reusability, you are going to learn when we learn about classes and functions. And when I make my videos on functions, I'm going to link that video here, so make sure to watch it, because functions really are one of the most important things that you have to understand, not only for C++ programming, but for programming in general. So make sure to watch that video. And let's say that for now we are only going to really adjust this code here. So we are going to modify it a little bit in order to draw this shape here. So if you look at these two shapes, you can really notice similarities. And what are those? So this inner for loop behaves about the same in both of these triangles. But there is one key difference, and that is going to be that in this triangle shape, our outer for loop counts from 1 to 5, and then in this reverse triangle, our outer for loop really counts from 5 to 1. So if we modify that, we are going to have this reversed triangle. So let me move these, and then I'm going to really copy this here. So I'm going to use Control-C and then Control-V, and then let's really add a couple of end lines between these two. Okay, like this. And then let's really modify this triangle shape that we have just explained and drawn. And as you could see on this image here, our outer for loop counts from 5 to 1, which means from the size that our user has entered, from 1. So that means that if we change our outer for loop, we should get that reverse triangle shape. So it goes from length, like this, and it really goes while our I is greater than or equal to 1, and then our I decreases in each iteration, so it decrements. And now, if I run my program, it asks me for length. Let's say that length is going to be 5, and then symbol is going to be, let's say, this plus symbol. And when I pressed enter, we have gotten both of these triangle shapes. So this one that we have drawn first, and then this reversed triangle shape as well. I hope that now you have really seen the real beauty of programming. You learn some basics, and then you can use those basics in the most creative ways that you can think of. So I hope that you liked this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon as well, so that you are notified when I publish my next video, and a lot more great videos are coming. Thanks for watching. I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to the first video of C++ functions. If you're a beginner at C++, make sure to check out my playlist on C++ for beginners, and there you can find some of the most important concepts that you will need to understand and know in order to work with C++. And in this video we are going to talk about C++ functions. So functions are one of the most important concepts that you will need to understand and use in order to be a good programmer. And that is not only the case in C++, but in most programming languages as well. The first thing that I want to explain is what is function. Function is a block of code that is grouped together, and usually that block of code solves a specific problem, meaning it performs a specific task, and that block of code is executed only when you call that function, meaning only when you invoke the function, the body of that function is going to be executed. And each C++ program contains at least one function, and that is going to be main function. So this here, and the execution of your program starts on the first line of your main function, and then it ends when it comes to this last line, so this close bracket of your main function. And also it can end when it comes to return statement, but we are going to talk about return statements later in this course. So main function is the main one, so the first one that is executed, and whatever code you put in your main function, that code is going to be executed as part of your program. So if I say here, for example, cout, and I say hello from main function, like this, and let's add a new line, like this, and now if I run my program, you can see that our program has written out hello from main, and that is the first function that our program starts executing. Besides from main function, you can also create your own functions, and let's explain how you can do that. So there are a couple of things that you need to know in order to create your own function, and that is going to be following. So the first thing that you need to really write when you create your own function is going to be return type of your function, and that is going to be void for now, which means that this function is not going to return anything. And we are going to talk about return types more in detail later in this course. So for now, we are going to use void return type, meaning that this function that we declare in this line is not going to return anything. And then you write out the name for your function, and let's call it function, like this. And then in these parentheses, you can put arguments or parameters that your function really receives. And for now, these parentheses are going to be empty, meaning that this function does not receive any arguments. And then in these curly brackets, we are going to put the body of our function. So this here is going to be the function that we created ourselves, and you have to specify the return type of your function. After that, you write out the name of your function. Then in these parentheses, you can put any arguments that your function receives. In this particular case, these are empty, and we are not going to send any parameters to our function. and then here is going to be the body of your function. And what we are going to put in this body, let's say cout hello from function, like this. And let's also add end line at the end of this function. So now we have really created our own function, which is called function. And if I run my program now, what do you think that is going to happen? Write that in the comments down below. So I am going to run this program, and as you can see, nothing has changed really. Our program has written out hello from main as it did before, so before we created this function. That is because, as I explained, your function is not going to execute until you call that function. So until you invoke it, it is not going to execute. So in order for our function to be executed, we need to invoke that function. And how that is done? So here in this line after hello from main, we are going to put function and then these parentheses. So this here is the invocation of our function. And now our function is going to be executed. So now if I press this play button, you can see that now our console has changed. So now we have hello from main and then also hello from function. So that is because we have invoked this function here. And you can invoke this function wherever you need it. So you can, I have invoked it after this line here, but you can invoke it as well before this line here if you need to and if you want to. So now if I run my program, you can see that it first says hello from function and then it says hello from main, because this function has been invoked first and then we have written out this line of code here. And that you can see in this console window. And let me show you one thing. So I'm going to return this after this line of code, the invocation of our function. I'm going to return here. And now I'm going to take this code here, so this definition of our function, and I'm going to paste it after our main function. And let's see what is going to happen now. So let me delete these blank lines. And now if I run my program, you can see that our program has failed to build. So we have compile time errors. And in this window here, in this error list, you can see that it says function identifier not found, which means that this function here is really, our compiler does not understand what this function is, because C++ code is executed from top to bottom. And when it comes to this line here, so when it comes to the invocation of your function, it is really not familiar with this function. It does not know what this function is. So you have to either put this code before your main function, as we did before, or you have to do other thing, which is really the recommended way to create your functions. And that would be to create definition and declaration of your function. So what are definition and declaration of function? Declaration of function is going to be really this here. So I'm going to copy this and put it before our main function. And this declaration of function is going to tell to your compiler what is going to be the return type of your function, what is the name of your function, and then if there are any parameters that your function really receives, you are going to put those in these parentheses here. So that is going to be declaration of your function. And that part, declaration of your function, goes before your main function. And after that, you are going to write the definition of your function, and the definition of your function is going to go after your main function. And in that way, you are going to make your code more readable, meaning that when someone else comes to your code, and if your code had 200 or 300 or 400 lines of code, then it would be really hard to read that code, and for someone it would be really hard to manage and go through your code. So he is going to find it much easier if he has all the declarations of your functions before your main function. And then if he needs to read a specific definition of a function, he can right-click the name of that function and click Go to Definition. And then he's going to be taken to the definition of your function, so the specific one that he needs to read, so that you don't bombard that user with all the functions, all the definitions of functions that you have in your program. And in this particular situation, it is only one function, but your program is going to consist usually of more than one function, and that is really unreadable when you find a lot of definitions of functions before your main. So you can right click on your function and say go to definition, or you can press F12. So you can click on your function and then press F12, and you are going to be taken to the definition of your function. Okay, so this here is the recommended way to create functions. And now if I press play button, you can see that our program has executed, actually has written out the same as it did before. So we have really removed that error that we had when we moved this definition of a function after our main, because we have added this declaration of a function before our main function. And there is really the most important thing that I want to mention in this video, and that is going to be what is the reason why functions exist. Okay, so we have seen that they make your code a bit more readable, so they group the parts of your code together so that you can manage your code easier. And the most important characteristic of functions is that they make your code reusable, meaning that you can write a specific code once, so you can solve a specific problem once, put the solution, the algorithm, the code for that problem in a function, and then you can really invoke that function however many times you need it. So here I can really copy this and then paste it, let's say 3 times if I needed it. And then if I run my program, you can see that this function has been executed 3 times here. And that is really the most important thing about functions, which means functions make your code reusable. You don't have to write the same code over and over again. And you should really try to group your code in functions so that each function does a specific task, nothing more than that. And in that way, you are going to make your code easier for yourself and for other people as well that are going to read your code. So I hope that you understood what functions are and how they are used. And we are going to talk about functions in more detail in my later videos. So make sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon, because only then you are going to be notified when I publish my next video. And also follow me on my other social media platforms, so Instagram and Twitter accounts through Code Beauty. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video of C++ functions. In this video, I wanted to talk about function parameters or arguments. And the first thing that I want to explain is what are parameters, so what are arguments. Sometimes a function needs to receive a certain value, a certain variable, and then perform a certain task on that value, so on that variable, or it really needs the value of that variable in order to perform a certain task. So let's explain how we are going to create a function that receives a parameter in C++. So here I'm going to add a function of return type void, and I'm going to say that that function is going to be called, let's say, introduce me, like this. And then in these parentheses here, we can put parameters that our function is going to receive. And after that, in these curly brackets, we are going to put the body of our function. So as I said, in these parentheses here, we are going to put parameters, and they are specified in the following way. So first you are going to write out the type of your parameter, and that is going to be string, like this. And then we are going to specify the name of our parameter, and that is going to be, let's say, name. So we want to pass in this function that is going to introduce our user, we want to really pass the name of our user. And then what our function is going to do, we are going to put in these curly brackets here, and that is going to be really to introduce our user. So our function is going to write out cout, let's say my name is, And then let's write out this name that we have received in this function. So I'm going to say name, and I'm going to add end line, like this. Okay, so this is the way to pass a parameter, so to pass a value to your function. And as I said in my previous video, you can really separate this declaration and definition of a function. So you can put really declaration of your function here, so before your main function, and then you can put definition of your function after your main function. And if you don't know how to do that, make sure to watch my first video of this playlist. Okay, so now I want to invoke this function here. And how we do that? Well, we specify the name of my function. So I'm going to say introduce me, and then since this function receives argument, so since this function receives a parameter here, we really have to pass that parameter to our function, and that I'm going to put here. So here I'm going to pass an argument to my function. So I'm going to say Saldina, like this, and this here really is called argument, so it is a value that we pass to our function, and then here it is called parameter. Okay, so now if I run my program, you can see that my function has successfully introduced me. So it says my name is Saldina, like this. Okay, so here we have really defined our function. So the parameters that our function receives, name, return type, and then the block of code that our function is going to execute. And then here we have invoked our function and passed an argument, which is this string of text here, to our function, which is going to be received in this name variable. And then our function is going to